Hey all, this is my Module 3 Special Education Interviews. I first want to explain who I interviewed. For my administrator, I interviewed Miss Darcy Sly. She's the assistant principal. She actually took this exact course with our exact teacher. She's starting her first year. She's actually right in the middle of her first year of being an administrator. I then interviewed for my special education teacher. I interviewed Kathy Patelka. She's been here for about 19 years. And then for my paraprofessional, I interviewed Tracy Cochran, who's been here. This is her second year. For overall, what child find procedures and how we use those and how we use those in our school. For the administrator, she was explaining, she used to be in the elementary school, so she explained that they are sending stuff out about this starting in kindergarten all the way through. But here now in our middle school, she relies heavily on our teachers to identify students, and then we send them to our SIT team so that they can then be evaluated. Our SPED teachers, her main wish was that we could just identify earlier instead of waiting until middle school to identify some of these kids where they might be falling behind. I'm a paraprofessional. She is kind of new to the district, being her second year, but if she sees concerns, she brings them to the general education teacher and or the special education teacher, and she just keeps her eyes open for students that are struggling in general. What do we find the most challenging part of their roles and why? The administrator was easy, which finding and retaining competent teachers. She said it's actually very difficult to find special education teachers that are very detailed in what they do, as well as training special education teachers and staff on how to de-escalate strong behaviors from students that are on these IEPs or 504s. But she said every year is different because it is very diverse. Special education teachers said it's very hard to keep up with paperwork as she does it a lot on the weekend. And she said it's just a lot to do if you are going to do it right. Paraprofessional, she said teaching and working with students that struggle with reading. She actually homeschooled all of her kids, and so she wasn't introduced with students that struggled to read until she came here, so that was tough. And then just how to meet the needs of all the diverse students that there are. What was the most reporting part of their job? These all seem to be pretty similar. Administrator was getting to see students exit SPED. Like I said, she's from elementary and then she came to middle school. So she actually put some of these kids in the special education program, and then now she's seeing them exit here in middle school, and she loves that. SPED teacher is very similar, watching students grow, and the paraprofessional was breakthroughs with students, especially some of the more difficult ones, and then seeing those students succeed. What advice do they have on the supervision of SPED staff? Administrator was just know everybody's schedule, that include the paras, SPED teachers, etc., and know which students are on whose caseload, especially if you have multiple special education teachers. And then make sure all staff know the accommodation that each student needs. It's her job to make sure that we are implementing what we need to. SPED teacher mentioned that, again, make sure everyone is doing their job, make sure everyone is where they're supposed to be, as well as work with all kids, not the students they like or get along with. She says that sometimes paraprofessionals and even teachers will help go the extra mile for some kids they like, but then won't, even if the kid accommodations say they're supposed to. So we got to make sure we're obviously doing that. Paraprofessional wished that it started, or that supervision started earlier, even before she started the job. She was just kind of thrown in the classroom and had no training on how to be a good paraprofessional. And then further training when specific issues arise that she's dealing with. And then how do you work effectively with parents of SPED students is what I asked them. The administrator said definitely build a relationship with them. And then, but in general, the SPED teacher is the first go-to with parent communication. If there's issues there, then they bring it to the administrator, as well as then in IEP meetings. SPED teacher is just stay in constant contact, give good reports, not just the bad stuff. So I know she's on the phone a lot with her parents, just talking about how the kid they go on, what their strengths, what their weaknesses are. Paraprofessionals, she said she didn't really work much with parents. Obviously, that's just not her position, but she does give her observations that she finds to the special education teacher to then either be included in the IEPs or just report to the parents, whether, hey, it's a positive thing or a negative thing. Then how do they work with general education teachers? The administrators make sure, like I said earlier, they make sure they know and understand the accommodations. And then she wanted to make sure that all SPED students are everyone's students. They're not just the SPED teacher students. It's our job, even as a general education teacher, to make sure that we are going above and beyond for these students. SPED teacher is, she said she answers a lot of questions, being a problem solver with that gen ed teacher. I know I bring my problems in, or how to modify things, and I bring them to her with questions. She gives us IEPs at a glance, which is just the IEP in short form instead of the real thick form that they have. And she updates teachers on any updated accommodations as they're having these IEPs and they're editing them. The paraprofessional, she works hand in hand with the gen ed teachers. Communication, she said, is a key for teachers to give her their expectations and what they're wanting her to do for each and every lesson. What advice would they give to a first-year administrator? Administrator would school yourself on how to de-escalate students. That's a major issue that she sees, especially with the students we have this year in our school. She said, research. If you're having issues, find out what others have said about it. Find mentors who are knowledgeable. She has one right in our building that she said she goes to the director of our special education department and gets as much help as she can from him. And then just know how to follow SPED law, as it's obviously a legal document that we have to follow these IEPs and 504s. Just make sure you know what the laws are. SPED teacher advice for the administrator was to get to know the kids and develop those relationships. You kind of find that as a theme that's running all the way through this entire presentation. Paraprofessional is just learn. She said she would tell an administrator, just learn as much SPED as you can, and then communicate those expectations and things you learn with the paraprofessionals instead of just letting them fly by the seat of their pants, which sometimes happens, unfortunately, I feel, in our school. And then give training to the paraprofessionals. I feel like this is where we are lacking in our school is specific training, as the paraprofessional even brought up herself. They want it, it's just not available at this time. And so they're working on it, and they know it's an issue, and they are doing their best to fix it. How would you describe the role of the SPED teacher and the principal? The administrator, it's the admin's role to make sure SPED teachers are doing what they need to do for the SPED teachers. They're the one kind of overseeing and making sure that needs are being met. But she said definitely need a good and open relationship with them. It should be a fluid conversation. That's the same thing the SPED teacher said. She said it's tight-knit, constant, fluid conversation, not leaving each other on purpose or on accident in the dark, but letting them know what's going on. The paraprofessional said that she thought that this relationship would be extremely important. It needed to be a good relationship because we don't want to let students fall through the cracks, because I feel like sometimes we focus on just the students with the strong behaviors that we forget the kids that are they still on IEPs and they still need help, but they don't have a strong personality, so we kind of overlook them. So she said make sure that they are focused on those students as well. And then what characteristics were they looking for? Administrator was experienced, good at building relationships, detail-oriented, not afraid to have tough conversations if a SPED teacher or paraprofessional is not doing their job. Be ready to have those tough conversations. A SPED teacher wants administrators to be knowledgeable on special education students, build that relationships, be caring, truly care for these students, and understand these students and where they're coming from and their struggles. Paraprofessional just wanted follow through. She sees that sometimes special education or administrators sometimes will say, hey, we're going to do this plan with this special education student, and then there's no follow through and we don't do it, and she doesn't like that, which is why she mentioned the consistency in structure there as well. So my reflection on these interviews, I thought they were very insightful. To see those varying points of views that the three of them had, it brought to light some new things and stuff that I was already thinking of where our strengths and weaknesses, especially in our building, are. And then just the priorities of where the different people put priority with special education, where the SPED teacher put it, where the paraprofessional put it, and where our administrator put it. My evaluation of the answers, common thoughts, I've mentioned this, that relationship building was all throughout, as well as training for specific issues, supervision and accountability. They want people to be supervised and be accountable for what they're seeing, and then always gaining knowledge of things that need to learn. Some different thoughts that I saw and compared between them is the importance of different issues and the amount of training given. I know the para said that she felt like she had no training, but then the special education teacher felt like there was a lot available to them. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there. My projection of my future role as an administrator, I need to be a lifelong learner, be in SPED, understand SPED law and the differences and the intricacies of that. I need to definitely work on building relationships with special education students and staff so that I can lead them well. SPED is very detailed, so definitely being detail oriented and dotting my I's, crossing my T's. Don't be afraid to ask, find that mentor that knows a lot about it and get them on your side. And then understand the diversity. Not all special education students and staff are the same. They are all very different. So we definitely need to make sure that we are understanding the diverseness of them. These are the standards that I felt like fit this the most, analyzing how law and policy is applied consistently, fairly, and ethically within the school. And that's specifically special education law and the intricacies they are, making sure that we are following the law and doing the right thing for these students. And support educators in using technology to advance learning that meets the diverse learning, cultural, and social emotional needs of the individual students. And this was that training bit that I feel like we are lacking, especially for the paraprofessionals in our building, that I need to support them by giving them the resources they need and using technology to help further their education so that we can meet the needs of all students.